Alexander, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm good. Your microphone is very good.
Is my microphone good? Are you serious or are you pulling my leg
No,
here?
it's really good. I have to lower my volume a little bit. Michael, how are you?
Doing well. How about you?
I'm good. What's new with you, Michael?
Not much. Just a little impressed with the stock price recovery today, given that there wasn't any denial on the 8.8 delay from Elon, but it's good.
About Tesla, what's the update on how the rollout is going?
There was no new waves yesterday, so it's just what we had the day before. So we're still at about 18% of eligible cars, or 5.5% of the entire fleet. That's what's targeted. So there are still cars that are still installing the update, but no new waves since the day before yesterday.
Okay, thank you very much. Michael, how are you thinking about Q2 financials?
I think that some investors are a little bit overexcited on the auto margins and them hopefully improving. I hope they do, but I urge a lot of caution given the financing deals and the uncertainty around the accounting treatment for those financing deals that hit the two largest markets, the US and China, in Q2. So I think auto margins might be lower than some of the bulls expect. However, we might have good results in energy margins because the deployments doubled, and there's a theory from Larry that the actual cash margin is closer to 35 to 40% as they recognize more revenue as they meet performance obligations. So positive on energy margins, negative on auto margins. I think there will also be a restructuring charge after the layoffs, and Tesla will overall, on an operating efficiency line, probably get more efficient going forward.
Thank you. What is the long-term energy margin that you assume, let's say a couple of years down the line?
Well, I think energy storage is almost a commodity. Battery cells are definitely a commodity, but energy storage will become quite a commodity. So in the longer term, I expect the margins to compress. And Tesla wants to go for scale. So they're going to do the same thing that they did in the auto business. Will compress the margins and scale deployments.
Thank you. Alexander, I want to ask you something. Let's see. I think it was on Patreon you messaged. Oh, you said something about Northvolt going in trouble. Can you tell us more about that, please?
Yeah, sure. So Northvolt was founded by two ex-employees from Tesla a couple of years ago, and yeah, they have had a struggle. They supply batteries for Volkswagen and BMW, Volvo, and some other companies. And yeah, the latest news is that BMW canceled their order worth, I think it was like 20 billion or $2 billion. Yeah. And they also have trouble with timelines, getting the production to work. People are dying in the production. This is real. So yeah, a lot of problems. And Volkswagen actually owns 20% of Northvolt, and they are actually also thinking of breaching contract now and not wanting to have the deliveries of the batteries.
How do you know that last piece?
The last piece was news that hit this morning, actually.
Really? Did it say why?
It's because of delays. So there are a lot of delays. I mean, they built Northvolt. I've actually been there, not inside but outside. They built it in like a pretty remote place of northern Sweden, and I mean the workforce up there. You can't get the right engineers and stuff. They actually had to fly in engineers from other countries.
That's interesting. So the primary is Northvolt supposed to be the primary battery supplier for BMW, Volkswagen, and others?
I don't know if it's gonna be the main supplier because they have different suppliers, but it for sure is gonna be a big portion of Volvo's supply.
Or I guess at this point it was supposed to be, but it doesn't look like it's going to be, right?
Nope. I mean, they need more capital as well. So that's gonna be hard for them, I guess.
That's interesting. Well, keep us updated because the first ever time I heard about that was when you mentioned it in the Patreon chat. So thank you very much. And it is
You're
something that we should
welcome.
kind of keep an eye on. Michael, what do you think about this Northvolt, which was founded by ex-Tesla engineers, seeing orders canceled from these legacy automakers, battery orders canceled from legacy automakers, and I think Alexander said $2 billion of orders canceled by BMW.
Well, yeah, we've seen a lot of the legacy automakers pull back on EV investments and EV production ramps. Ford cut their production and their production forecasts. A number of them have. So it's not surprising to see that something similar is happening in Europe with Northvolt. I think what Tesla outlined in the Q1 letter, though, is accurate, that the industry kind of has pivoted to plug-in hybrids a little bit and has pulled back on investments in BEVs, and that's going to end up hurting them in the long run.
Can you say that last part again, please?
I think that Tesla's assessment in the Q1 letter, where they said basically that currently the industry is pivoting to plug-in hybrid electric vehicles over battery electric vehicles, is a long-term mistake that will hurt the legacy automakers in the long run as battery electric vehicle demand rises.
Yeah. I mean, they don't appear to be concerned about that, though. This is amazing. So they're cutting their battery supplier. I mean, how is Northvolt supposed to survive if they cancel billions of dollars of orders? Anyway, we're going to keep at Alexander.
Yeah, I just want to mention BMW canceled the order because Northvolt delayed the deliveries. That's why they canceled. So the BMW actually has another supplier, I think, in Asia somewhere.
Oh, I see. Okay. So, okay, interesting. So Northvolt couldn't ramp, or they couldn't lower the cost of production. Do we know what
No,
happened?
they couldn't ramp. Like they have major problems getting the right engineers, getting the production lines to ramp up. So there's a lot of problems.
Okay. Matthew, how are you?
Doing well. Thanks for inviting me up.
And so you've been doing some trades on Tesla with call options, right? And you said doing a thing for every like this tweak is buy one share. Okay. So you say that Tesla is way too cheap, and you posted this today at just now, about an hour ago. And you say every like you'll buy one share. So now you have 1,700 likes. Wow.
Yeah, I added a cap of 2,000 likes because it it escalated pretty quickly. So
That's amazing.
I've been trading a lot of options for the past 2 months. During the run up. So I typically buy calls and sell puts. Usually when the stock is pretty flat, all I do is sell puts. I sell like 1 week out puts or 2 week out puts, and just get a little bit of cash for that. And if they expire in the money, I let them expire and buy more shares. I'm definitely in a accumulation phase right now. So on the 28th of June, I bought 200 contracts with a 220 strike price. And at the time, I think Tesla was trading around 179. So it was, they were way out the money. I bought them for $1.48 each. Today they're worth $30, so a 20x increase, 20 bagger, which if you're new to options, pretty rare you get a 20 bagger. Don't think this is normal. So I sold about 75% of them, I think 150 of them last week when they were up about 1,700%, like when they were at a 17 bagger. And then I sold the reason I limited my buys today to 2,000 shares is because I have 20 contracts left. So I sold.
Okay. Got it.
Trimmed a little bit.
So let me ask you this. I pinned at the top a question for everybody. Tesla, where is it going to go next? 300 or 200? So right now it's at 250, almost on the dot. So $50 higher or $50 lower? Matthew, how are you positioned? What do you think?
Well,
I guess you must think it's going. I guess you must be going to 300.
Yeah, I mean, I'm the eternal
okay,
optimist.
We're gonna skip you for a second then. Michael, what do you think?
I think the next stop is more likely 300 than 200. I know, the technical analysis is usually it's like astrology for men, but it sometimes works, and it sometimes astrology sometimes quote unquote predicts due to the human psychology. But anyway, so technical analysis suggests that there's like kind of a resistance point in the low 200s. So I don't think it's going to go to 200 anytime soon unless we get bad earnings.
What do you mean? You mean support? You mean support points, right?
Yes, sure. Sorry, that's what I meant.
Okay. Alexander, do you trade at all?
I pretty much just buy and hold.
Okay. All right. And okay. So Matthew, what gives you so much confidence?
Well, so I've been monitoring Tesla stock now for 5 years, basically all day, every day, and we've gone into these lulls before, and this really reminds me of 2019 when we were hanging around that pre-split price point of around 200 shares, and that's when I first invested in Tesla, because I was like, there's no way it can go any lower than this. So when I saw the stock trading in the 150s, 160s over the last couple of months, even when Elon was selling, he was on, and all the shorts were jumping in and front running his sales. The stock dropped to about 105, and during that time, there were so many Tesla shareholders who were over leveraged, who were basically margin called and lost their shares. And I think that really affected a lot of people, and there's not as many people who are as over leveraged now as there were then. And so I haven't I haven't seen any of that downward pressure as strong as it was in the past. Tesla's essentially been flat for the last few years. They've had pretty underwhelming performance as far as deliveries and margins go for the past 2 years. But there's so many positive things that are coming that I really believe in as when it comes to like FSD, the bot, the cyber cab, or the next gen vehicle. And so I wouldn't be surprised if we hover, bounce back and forth between, around 190 and say 300 from now until the end of the year. But if the Robotaxi event occurs, at the end of the summer, beginning of the fall, I'll probably go in pretty heavy on calls like right before that event as well. I think we'll see it'll be like the one time Tesla will have an event where the stock will actually go up after the event instead of down.
Okay. So you believe that the investor base today is not as leveraged as a year ago. You believe that a year ago there was a confluence of negative events and fear, uncertainty, and doubt that it pushed the stock price to 100. So you don't think it's going to go below 200 at this point. And if the stock stays here and we get to Robotaxi event, then you would go heavy in the calls. Is that what you said?
Yeah, I mean, I could definitely see it going down to 200 or slightly below, but I don't see it returning to that the 150 mark. Expectations were so low for production and deliveries, and we saw pretty solid beat. Expectations are low for earnings. I actually think earnings are going to have a slight beat. I might play some options, the week of earnings. So I think we're going to have a slight beat on very low expectations in earnings this quarter. And then I think there could very easily, the run up that we saw, this week with the stock going up to 270, and then getting killed once the Ed Ludlow report of Robotaxi Day getting delayed a couple of months. I would not be surprised if we see that repeat again, when it comes time for the actual Robotaxi event.
Okay. Thank you. Michael?
Yeah, I think some bulls are actually pushing up the expectations for Q2, making a beat less likely. But I will say that it's a good sign that a lot of analyst upgrades seem to be indicating a narrative shift and more interest towards other businesses that Tesla is developing, like the energy storage business, like the FSD sales and subscription, and eventually robotaxis and bots as well. So that there is a narrative shift happening in addition to kind of the technical breakout of the many years downtrend since 2021. There's a downtrend line above that Tesla is now above. So it's an interesting time. I think the narrative shift kind of supports this kind of breakout. And so I'm also pretty positive on the stock.
Are you in calls as well, Michael?
I jump in and out of them. I have my core position of shares that I never touch, and then I jump in and out of calls. I've been out of calls for the last couple days. So I was happy with the profits that I made there.
Okay, thank you. Clay?
Why doesn't Tesla just give out FSD for free until it's perfected? And that would also increase the amount of training data and compute they could work with.
Well, so the training compute obviously is not like that doesn't increase when you give away your FSD for free. What would increase maybe is disengagement data. And we don't know if that is the limiting factor today. I think the limiting factor changes. Just like in a production ramp, limiting factor varies from time to time. So maybe it was a limiting factor and that they lowered it to $99 a month. Maybe today is not the limiting factor. They did some FSD trials. So that is, I guess, in a way, giving it away for free. And I just trust that the management is in the best position. They have millions of orders of magnitude more data than we all have combined, and they'll make the best decision with these things. Michael?
I'd say there's two reasons why. The primary reason is that they actually do need to have training data from people who are not using FSD and to evaluate FSD in shadow mode among people who are not using it. So, and Elon mentioned this, like that there's a challenge of validating that that FSD has lower intervention. The latest software has lower intervention rates, and one way to do this is to actually deploy it in shadow mode to people who don't use FSD and compare how the human drives versus how FSD would have driven. So that's one reason. And then the second reason is because the compute is very expensive. Their 139 megawatt compute cluster that they're building in Texas is going to cost upwards of $3 billion. And Elon wants to expand it to 500 megawatts by the end of next year, which is going to cost $10 billion cumulatively. And then eventually he wants to scale compute to 5 gigawatts, which is going to be tens of billions of dollars of investment. So they need to raise money to fund all of that.
Okay, we're going to go to Alexander in a second, and now we have Magic as well. We have a good group of people today. I really appreciate you all being here. And at the top of your screens, I pinned Ryan's reply to the space. Ryan has been religiously every single day asking people to like and repost the space, and I really appreciate that. I like that, people in this space value the space enough that they share it with their friends, family, followers, colleagues, etc. Really appreciate that, Ryan. Thank you. Alexander.
Yeah, how could they know when they are running it in shadow mode if something is a critical disengagement or not?
So when there's a disengagement, how does Tesla know it's critical? Is that the question?
No, if they're running in shadow mode and FSD is not actually running on the car, how can they know if it's a safety critical disengagement or not?
I mean, obviously, running it in shadow mode has its limitations, right? It's not going to be perfect. If that was perfect, we'd have FSD by now. So, they get some information from running in a shadow mode. They get some information from pushing it out to customer cars. They get some information running in a simulation, and they try to do their best piecing all that together. So, that's the best answer I got for you. But if anybody has any other answers, you may raise your hand or request to speak. Alexander, what do you think?
What I think, I only have autopilot, even though I paid for FSD. So I don't know. I'm not the right person to ask.
About Tesla, what do you think?
I think it's not just disengagements or critical interventions of any sort, but it's also just looking at the patterns. They can see how the drivers do certain things, like how they handle certain intersections, or let's say my favorite example is let's say railroad crossing. So I always had problems with the railroad crossing until this last version, which does it perfectly now. Like, it crosses them at the speed I would do it. And that's something that they could collect in shadow mode, and just by studying, how drivers do this. So they don't have to intervene or anything. They just can provide some statistics about how the typical human behavior in certain cases. So that all can be coming from the shadow mode.
Yoda, what do you think? Thank you about Tesla. That's a great answer.
Oh, I just hopped on.
Okay. Magic, how are you?
Good. Hey, just had a question
Hey,
regarding.
I have something for you. So I really value your participation in the speaker board. I do. And I think that we should have bulls and bears balanced. So you add a lot of value. I think I also appreciate that you are a true bear, not one that's pretending to be a bear, and that you put your money where your mouth is. So I, as you know, I gotta put you on mute because we're getting some static. As you know, I publish a summary for my patrons every day after every episode. I do 5 to 10 bullet points of what we discussed that people can, and I put the time links as well, so they can use it as, if they want to listen to this portion, that portion, so you can use those links. So yesterday, I posted one of what you said in the summary, and some people didn't like that. Some people didn't like that, and they let me know in the comment. People disagree with you. I don't think this is news to you, but I just wanted to let you know that I value what you say to the extent that I even put it in the summary from our patrons.
Yeah, I appreciate it. It's a good space, Yama. You're doing a good job. And yeah, I mean, you are letting us up, so that's good. But yeah, really quick. I guess my main point is kind of circling back to yesterday's article, and that Elon hasn't confirmed or denied it. So is anybody worried, or is it delayed? Like, what's the consensus here? I think the bears generally say, yeah, it's delayed, and the article's correct. But I want to see what everybody thinks here.
Let's start with Yoda, because Yoda had some views on it yesterday. Yoda, what do you think? The fact that Elon has not confirmed or denied it yet, do you think that means one way or another?
Yeah, I think if Elon had basically denied the delay, then 8.8 is still going on. But I think at this point he is not going to refute the claims that it's delayed, and he's just gonna ignore the traditional media's rhetoric.
Magic?
But I mean, what if people have travel plans? What if they want to go see it? I mean, they have to change it. I mean, people have to know if the event's going on or not. So, I mean, how long can we keep this going?
They can't keep it going for a while. I mean, even if Elon just said tomorrow we have a Tesla event, he would have enough people to fill the space. Don't worry about that. I guarantee you. I think the fact that he hasn't said anything yet doesn't mean that it's delayed or not delayed, etc. I don't think it means much. Maybe he'll say next week. Who knows? But I do think it's delayed. Honestly, I think there's that information for us to say. Like, if I was making a coffee bet, I would bet that it's actually delayed. Michael, and then Matthew.
Yeah, just to respond to Magic, historically, Tesla has sent out event invites like 1 or 2 weeks before the event, as close as 1 or 2 weeks before the event. So that's not an issue. But I would add that I'm a bull, but I believe that the event is likely delayed.
Yeah, Matthew, what do you think?
Yeah, I assume if it was a false report, Elon would have responded, false or lies or something like that by now. So the fact that he hasn't, I'm leaning towards it being more likely to be true than not. If you read the bio on Elon Musk, you kind of heard a similar story about the Cybertruck unveil. Elon set the date before the engineers and the designers were ready, and used that as a way to push them to actually get it done. And so when he initially announced the 8.8, that was when Tesla stock was crashing. I think it was like 140 a share. And I think when he posted the 8.8, it was a little reactionary because Tesla was getting killed in the markets. So I think he posted it reactionary. He's eternally optimistic, kind of like myself, like optimistic to a fault. But I don't. So yeah, sure, it's going to be delayed 2 months. If you remember Battery Day, I posted a tweet about this yesterday. Battery Day was initially scheduled for April of 2020, and then he said it was going to be May, and then June, and then September. And then when it finally happened in September, it was a pretty, it's a pretty impressive event. Obviously, the timeline of delivering the 4680s and ramping up production and the yield, haven't like fully met those goals yet. But the fact that this is delayed, I don't think is going to make the event any less impressive. I do believe they're going to unveil two vehicles, a cyber cab as well as an additional, lower cost vehicle. And I wouldn't be surprised if they say there's going to be some jurisdiction that is going to be the first to actually allow, or the first one that they're going to test autonomous cyber cabs. And sure, at first, Tesla may even allow for having a human supervisor in the vehicle, which I imagine might be necessary at first.
Yeah, I think.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think. Let's say if the Cybertruck event back then unveiling was delayed by 2 months, does it matter today? It doesn't. I'm actually very interested to hear Elon eventually tell us why there is a delay. Let's suppose there is. And I think if the delay is delayed by, a couple of months to October, because the hardware or the demo that they want to do live is, needs to be refined, or they need to build more prototypes, it's a moot point. Tesla shares will just recover. But the more exciting reason, really, for me, is that if Elon says, "Oh, we need a couple more months, or we need 3 more months because 12.4 wasn't going that well as expected, and they need a couple more months to refine, let's say, the Robotaxi specific FSD model, or if they say, oh, Wuhan needs a couple more months to review our submission for regulatory approval, or whatever the jurisdiction is, this would be actually extremely bullish in my eyes, because this means that the Robotaxi event includes both the unveiling of the hardware, the car, as well as the service, albeit in a very restricted area. And so, Yaman, as I mentioned, I haven't made any moves today, yesterday, but what I'm doing is I'm queuing up Apple shares to get ready, if Elon actually says the delay is due to refinement of the FSD model or regulatory approval.
Magic.
Hey, Matthew said something interesting. He pointed out that the announcement for the 8.8 was happening while the stock was crashing, and I agree with that. That he announced it at a very opportune time for him to save the stock, and he made the announcement, I guess, that we're finding out, while it wasn't ready. So, and that's the big issue that we have, is that this constant, you're announcing things that aren't ready. You can't do that. You're doing that to manipulate the stock price up, right? That's what we interpret that.
Okay. Grant?
Yeah, I mean, same basic point here. I was going to say two things. First, it feels obvious from the bear side that this was done because he needed an announcement. It was a response to a Reuters article that he didn't like. He tweeted it, and then I think following that, a bunch of people probably learned they were going to be sprinting on a Robotaxi for the next 6 months.
I mean, you guys are this is speculation, and
That's
you're
my-
just
my
repeating. You're
opinion.
just repeating. I understand, but you're just repeating his points.
Yeah,
And
well,
I want to move the
didn't know what he was
conversation
gonna say when I put
forward.
my hand up. I had a second point I'll make. I'll just hop to that if that's okay.
Go ahead.
This is aggressive. That's fine. The second thing that I'll say to anyone talking about regulatory approval is that these are long and drawn out processes. They're still figuring out what the car is going to be. I would be really surprised. And maybe they can find someone to just take a flyer on it and say, yeah, whatever it is, when you have it, we'll let you do it. But I don't know that many people operate that way. Some of the language that's being used, like, yeah, they might have to have a test driver. Like, yeah, of course they will. I mean, like, there's no universe where someone says, yeah, go ahead and just start piloting cars around my locality without me seeing a model of the car, or, data supporting the safety of the vehicle and the technology. I think you guys are kind of detached from reality there.
Edward.
Hey, Yaman, thanks for bringing me up. I was just gonna reiterate about what.
Just one
what
second,
Yoda-
Edward.
Yeah.
I just want the record to reflect that I warned Grant so many times to not talk about you guys and bulk every bull in one bucket. And yet he continues to do that. And I do not appreciate that. It is so, so wrong and detrimental to the discussion. Edward, go ahead.
Yeah, I agree with almost everything Yoda was talking about. If he would have denied it right away, then it would have just been complete fake news. But the fact that he didn't deny it or confirm it doesn't mean it's not going to go on for 8.8. It doesn't mean that he can't push his team to get to that spot. And I'm pretty sure that's what he's going to try to do. Now, within a week or two, he will confirm or deny it, I'm sure, saying that they're going to do one way or another. But it may take a few days, if not a couple weeks, for him to identify if his team's ready. It's not like he's sitting there with the team every 5 minutes. So he has to meet with people, and it's not like he's not a busy guy.
I pinned at the top of your screens a simple question. When will Tesla unveil the Robotaxi? And please go up there, reply to that tweet. When will Tesla unveil the Robotaxi? Which inherently is asking if you think it's 8.8 or in October or some other time. So there's a bunch of different answers on there. Please reply with your estimates. Michael, you think that it's delayed? When do you think it's going to happen? What's the answer? What's your answer to the question at the top? And then Yoda.
Yeah, I think it's delayed. I think Omar was mentioning that he talked to a few people, and it seems like the delay is real. So I believe in the October timeline. It makes sense. Elon has done this before with the Cybertruck, for instance, when he asked for it to be, I think, 5 or 10% smaller in 2021, and they went back and redesigned the Cybertruck. So it's not surprising, and the stated reason from Bloomberg was that it was prototypes that needed to be reworked or new prototypes that needed to be developed. So that kind of aligns with previous Elon behavior on the Cybertruck, and maybe there's some elements that he really wants to be incorporated. So I believe in the October timeline.
Okay, Yoda. And then I'm going to ask Matthew about whether he's changed his trading strategy because of this delay. Yoda?
Yeah, well, August 8th is a great number for like meaning of fortune and so on. It's worth noting that October 1st to 7th is the Golden Week in China, which is the largest public holiday or one of the largest. So, landing it somewhere there is fine. As I mentioned, whether it's a couple months, that doesn't matter. It's the why that will actually be very exciting to learn. I have a quick, I don't know if it's quick, but I have a question later for Grant.
All right, that's a good question. Actually, Matthew, are you changing your trading strategy because of this delay? I know you do some call options. Did you have any short-dated ones, and did you roll them, or did you close them out? And what's your kind of thinking around that?
Shares. So, can you hear me?
A little poor, but go ahead.
I'm gonna. Yeah. So currently have very few calls, basically all shares. I actually didn't buy.
Yeah,
any.
Matthew, the sound quality is bad, so I'm going to get back to you. Yoda, why don't you ask your question to? Actually, before that, Bill Bob Joe, and then Yoda.
Yeah, I just wanted to come up and thank the Magic Berry Peddler. Yesterday, he recommended that we buy the dip and use margin. I did do that, and just wanted to say thank you. I'm very happy today.
Okay. Yoda?
Hey, Grant. Obviously, now we're talking about the delay of the Robotaxi event. But my question for you is if you can help me understand kind of the psyche. Um, let's say if we roll back the clock and we say when the Model Y was announced back in March 2019, my guess is I don't know if you were shorting at the time, but you were probably not seeing that as a successful vehicle. The launch itself, the unveiling itself, was kind of a bit of a sideshow, very abbreviated. And in 4 years, by the first quarter of 2023, it's the world's best-selling car. Now, maybe you could walk us through your psyche when it happened in the first quarter of 2023 when it became the world's best-selling car. What are the thoughts that goes to your mind when it actually happens?
First, I think it's kind of a weird question. I wasn't following the stock in 2019, so I can't comment on that. I don't necessarily believe that having the world's best-selling car is as important as things like revenue growth and earnings. I mean, that's not in and of itself something that makes a company valuable, having the best-selling anything. You could be selling, nickels for 4 cents or like nickels for 6 cents and have the best selling nickels in the world. It's not indicative of, it being a good business. I do want to say I agree with one thing you said, which is I think the reason around the shift is more important. I don't think that the actual date of the unveil really matters. I don't know what they're going to unveil. I remain perplexed by the fact that they're unveiling a Robotaxi when they're not able to, their technology is not able to support L4 autonomy. It feels a little backward to me. But yeah, that's my answer.
And that's nickels or nipples?
Nickels. I mean, I feel like a lot of people lean on that data point. I'm just saying it's not the most important data point.
Yeah, I agree with Grant. I agree with Grant. I agree. Yoda, I'll take the other side. I'll argue the bear case here because Grant does such a bad job about these things. The bear case on this sentence that Tesla sells the best vehicle. Best selling vehicle is a Tesla. I think it's great. Okay. I think from a mission perspective, it proves to the world that EVs can get there. But from an investor's perspective, I agree with Grant that it's kind of immaterial because, for example, like if I were Grant, what I would say is if he was actually a good bear, what he should be saying is like Toyota has a number of cars that are that address that segment, or BYD has more than one car that addresses that segment tangentially. So their sales are divvied up. Okay. Whereas Tesla has only Model Y. So if I were on the bear side, what I would be arguing is I would add up the sales of those automakers of the models that kind of address that segment and then compare to the Model Y. But they're not doing that because they're shitty bears. And we need better bears. We need better bears for good quality discussion.
You're going to lose if you're not willing.
And for example, on the Model 3, what I would say is, if I was a bear, I would say something like, look at the Corolla, add up the Camry, add up the Yaris in Europe, and then compare to Model 3 sales. So Yoda, what do you think about that argument?
Yeah, that's what I thought that Grant might say is that they're able to sell a lot of Model Ys, but it's due to incentives or the margins are depreciating. It's being basically selling an unprofitable vehicle for volume. And I guess I guess my point is does the goalpost just keep moving in the eyes of the bears when Elon says Model Y is going to be the best selling vehicle, or it potentially can, and when it happens, all the points about margins and all that noted, But when it happens, how does a bear actually take in that fact? Do they just talk about the margins, or do they move the goalpost again? That's the central question I have, and maybe Grant can comment. And this could be any goal.
Yeah, let's go to Magic first, and then Grant.
Yeah, I think like what Yaman was saying is that you have to, because Tesla only has like 4 models, like you get subjugated into 1 or 4 models. So if you want to compare it on apples to apples basis, you get all the Toyota sedans and then you add them up and then you compare them. That's the argument, is that because Tesla only has 4 models, of course only one model is going to be this. That's like saying Chick-fil-A sells the most chicken sandwiches. It's the only thing they offer, right? Like that's what the argument is. It's like you can't compare how many Chick-fil-A chicken sandwiches versus McDonald's, because McDonald's has a lot of things to order. That's what I'm saying.
Grant, and then Bill Bob Joe.
Yeah, I think I agree with what Magic said. I would just add that I think there's a tendency to look back on some of Elon's accomplishments and really incorporate them into your forward-looking view of the stock. In my mind, and this isn't an argument for a short-term oriented mindset, but you have to be living in the present and looking at the valuation of the stock and thinking about the future prospects and weighing all of that to decide if it's a good investment at this particular valuation. If you think to yourself, well, Elon did stuff that people didn't think was possible in the past, so I'm going to give this company credit for doing a bunch of things that people today are saying is impossible. You can do that, and I think that's valid, but it's in my mind immaterial. So that's just my perspective.
Bill Bob.
Yeah, so on that argument, as far as multiple models versus one, I think those companies are mature and they have a full model lineup. Tesla's not there yet. They're still expanding their lineup. They have new models coming. So unless you think that their new models are just going to only cannibalize sales from their existing models, of course their volume is going to expand. So I just don't see that there's much weight to that argument of looking at mature companies versus a growth company.
Yeah, I'm not surprised you're saying this, because you're also sport Rivian and you're a Rivian fan, although I don't think you're an investor, which I always find interesting. But the other thing, like this, Tesla fans saying Model Y is the best-selling vehicle is the same exact thing as Rivian CEO saying R1S is the best-selling EV or large SUV. The only reason is R1S is outselling Model X is because of Model Y. And Rivian CEO is, of course, misleading people by saying that. I think it's really, really amazing. I'm not trying to take away from Tesla's achievement that they have the best-selling vehicle, okay? It's an amazing, amazing achievement, very important to the mission, an incredibly important milestone for the mission. But from an investor's perspective, it's not that material. Yoda?
Hey, Grant, if you are Ford, which stage would you describe how they're looking at Tesla today? Are they at the stage of ignoring Tesla, laughing at Tesla, fighting Tesla, or fearing Tesla? And if it's the latter two, how does that make you maybe answer the same questions being on the short side of the trade?
I don't really know how to answer these questions. I mean, Ford is competitive with Tesla, and they should be doing some mix of all of those things. Like they should be, I don't remember the full list. They should be ignoring them and doing what they think is best for their business, kind of irregardless. They should be scared of them because they are producing products like the Cybertruck that are going to be competitive with products like the F-150 Lightning. They should be, I don't know, what were the other ones, like fearing them, like, that's just competition. Like they need to pay attention because they're selling similar products into the same end market, or depending on how you segment it, similar end markets, some of the same end markets. I don't know. I don't know what you're getting at, to be honest.
Alexander.
Yeah, I'm going to tell you a story. A couple of weeks ago, or a month ago, Tesla actually had a Cybertruck on show here in Sweden. And I have never seen a line of people so long out of a dealership or out of a Tesla store just to watch a car that they can't even buy. And we had to stand in line for like half an hour just to have a peek at the Cybertruck. And when I came into the store, I asked one of the Tesla employees, when can we buy this? And she said, you're the 100th person that asked me this today. I mean, isn't that a sign that they have a great product? I mean, I have never seen a Volkswagen dealership have a line of people waiting to ask when they can order a car.
All right, Edward, did you get a chance to talk?
Yeah, but I will mention about the Cybertruck. I mean, the demand, he's 100% right. I mean, everywhere we go, my wife's Cybertruck, whether I'm driving it, they always assume that it's my truck. And I'm laughing. I'm like, no, this girl is the one crazy enough to buy this thing. But it's insane. It's amazing. And until people are getting in it, driving it, I mean, it's going to sell 500,000 per year easily every year until they come up with something new, in my estimation, and as many as they can produce. I mean, I don't think it's an issue of the price. I mean, if they get the price down, then they're going to sell even more, but they don't have to get the price down. There's so much demand. It's supply and demand generated.
Michael, Joe Tagmeyer posted a video a couple of days ago, and thank you, Alphabet, for letting me know in Patreon. Joe Tagmeyer mentioned that 2 gigapresses are being added at Giga Texas, partially built. What do you think Tesla will build with those 2 additional gigapresses, Michael?
In Giga Texas, they're probably ramping most likely probably ramping Cybertruck production and to the next level. I'm not sure actually like what the capacity is of the existing gigapresses, but most likely would be Cybertruck, but it could be an interesting application for building those robotaxis, the Cybercab that they eventually unveil.
Okay, interesting. So most likely Cybertruck, but it could also be the Cybercab, you're saying. What percent probability would you assign to these new gigapresses building the Cybercab?
Probably 10-15%. And then also there's a possibility of whatever the new cheaper models are that are coming in next year. Although I doubt they will be using, they will need. Do you know what the size of the gigapresses were? Did he mention? Were they
6,000?
Okay, so I think the 6,000 ones can press Model Y castings, if I'm not mistaken. So then the other possibility is it's for the new models that are going to be built on the same lines as Model 3 and Y in 2025.
Interesting. Any other views on that? About Tesla, what do you think about these 2 new gigapresses being installed at Giga Texas? What do you think they're going to build? About Tesla? Okay. Moving down. Michael, what's the current capacity of the Cybertruck production line that's already installed and producing 250,000, right?
It's actually, Tesla cites it as greater than 125,000 per year in the quarterly reports. I think eventually they're going to build additional lines or build out the production capacity to 250,000 in the long run, as Elon has alluded to before.
Yeah. So with the current installed line, even if they kind of ramped all the way up, it would be 125,000 a year. So you're looking at about 2,500, 2,000 to 2,500. When do you think they're going to get to that level, 2,000 to 2,500 per week Cybertruck?
Well, currently they hit a max production rate, I think, of 1,400. I actually posted an article from Clean Technica that I wrote yesterday about the Cybertruck production ramp actually being the second fastest in Tesla's history.
How?
After only the Model Y. So
Well, I mean, how many production reps did they have?
well, it's the sexy vehicles plus Cybertruck, so it's the fifth production ramp. So it's faster than S, X, and 3.
I mean, I don't think you can compare it to S and X because they had a lower, you know, upper asymptote of the S curve. So you can, I think you can only compare it to S and X if you think in terms of percentage of nameplate capacity. And if you think of it that way, I think they're slower than S and X.
That's an interesting point. I'll do the analysis and see as a percentage of the capacity, because I believe the Model S and X were originally 50,000 each per year, and then Model 3 originally was 250,000 per year, and then Model Y, well, it depends on which factory. But yeah, so it would be an interesting comparison to do.
Yeah, I mean, right now they're at 1,000, right? And it was supposed to be 2,500, so they're at 40% of capacity. And for S and X, you said 50,000, and that would have been 1,000 a week. So 40% of the capacity would be 400 a week. And I think S and X got to nameplate capacity within a year, right? So 4 to 5 quarters. And Cybertruck production started almost a year ago, right? So
well, no, it started in the first deliveries of like a handful of trucks. I don't remember exact number. Was in November of last year. So it's
so what was the
significantly
first?
less.
I mean, didn't they publish a picture in June 2023?
That was like beta production, like.
No, that was release candidate. I think it was labeled as release candidate.
I wouldn't use release candidates as the metric. I would use what they actually deliver to customers, which is November of last year.
Okay. When do you think Cybertruck is going to get to 5,000 a week?
That's going to be a while, I think. 2026, maybe.
2026? No way. Are you serious?
Well,
Edward, what do you think?
Yeah, no, 2025 for sure. I mean, they may get to that production rate by the end of the year. You can see how fast they're already ramping up. And I think they're learning extremely quick because it's not as complicated exterior wise, I think, that people think that it is. You know what I mean? There's not as, the stamping issues that they have. They don't have to deal with the paint issues on the back end of it. So, I mean, it's more of the technology inside, I think, that has them maybe a little slow at first.
Michael?
I couldn't hear what he said.
Yeah, Michael, he's saying certainly in 2025. What makes you think it's going to be 2026? I might take you up on that coffee bet, actually.
I think it's going to take a while to reach 125,000 per year, which is, as you mentioned, 2,500 per week. I think that's going to be sometime mid next year. And then to ramp to 250 will also probably take into early 2026. That's my opinion. And I'm willing to coffee bet on it.
Yeah, I don't know. It's been going so slowly, and I expect a recession soon. So maybe they're kind of dragging their feet because of that. I don't know. But it is a very popular product, obviously. I mean, they've been selling it at $100,000 plus. Still, the decline in resale values slowed down a little bit in recent weeks. So they said they're only going to deliver foundation this year, which means they have confidence that they have enough demand for $100,000 plus price point. So, I guess we'll see. All right. Any questions, comments? Alexander, how you doing?
I'm doing good. I actually drove to Denmark the other day, 500 kilometers on autopilot, and autopilot actually did 95% of the trip.
What version are you on? Autopilot, you said?
Yeah, it's kind of an autopilot plus because I bought FSD, so they gave me some kind of FSD plus version. I mean, autopilot plus version.
Any news around FSD in Europe at all?
Well, I don't know. Like, we asked Omar. Omar said they can't launch or like ask to launch FSD in Europe because in Europe cars cannot by law change lanes by their own. So I don't know.
Yeah. It was supposed to be 2023, and then it was supposed to be 2024, and it's taking forever. Why do you think they are delaying so much? What's your thoughts around why Europe doesn't seem to allow Tesla FSD release?
Well, to be honest, I think it's the European auto industry that is fighting this because they have an air with the European Parliament for sure. I mean, the European auto section employs so many people, so they are probably pretty scared of FSD, to be honest.
Yeah, I mean, as they should be. I think FSD will be the end of these legacy automakers in Europe. I'm not surprised that they're doing everything they can. Troy has been vocal about the kind of lower sales of Teslas in Europe, especially in Germany. What are your thoughts on that?
In Germany, well, Germany is home of Volkswagen, home of BMW. I mean, many Germans, people that I have spoken to, keep on saying the same, like bare points that Tesla is bad build quality, and we need Germans cars because they are better quality. And I can't drive electric because I drive so far every day. I can't find any charging, but this is just not true. I drove from Sweden through Germany down to Italy last year, no problem. Supercharges every 100 kilometers or so. So that is not a problem. We will see. I mean, Giga Berlin is employing a lot of people, and now when they're gonna expand to and double the production in Giga Berlin.
That's the part that I don't understand, because on one hand we have Troy and data. I mean, Troy is very data oriented, and he's been so accurate over the last 10 years. He's probably the most accurate predictor of production and deliveries. Okay, and he's been very vocal about kind of this winning demand in Europe for Teslas. And on the other hand, Giga Berlin just got approved for expanding production. So how do you think about that difference? Can you help me understand, put those two together?
Well, obviously, as it is now, Model 3 that is sold in Europe is made in Shanghai. And I don't want to be like rude to Chinese people or Chinese manufacturing, but it's kind of a sentiment in Europe that we don't want like Chinese products. So, I mean, I think they're gonna start producing Model 3 in Giga Berlin. And if they do that, Model 3 will sell even more units. And I mean, Model Y is the best-selling car in Europe as well. So, and that's going to keep going, I think. So that doubling of the production is a good choice.
Uzi, what do you think? Uzi's having some connection issues. Uzi, can you guys see Uzi as a speaker? Uzi, try again. Oh, no. All right, Magic, what do you think about this weaning demand for Teslas in Europe versus expanding production approval?
Yeah, I mean, Europe, it's not really trending well. I mean, I don't know what's going to turn it around. Germans are very big into build quality. And I mean, look, Tesla, they've innovated on a lot of things in terms of the screen and electric cars and that. But I mean, I'm a build quality guy, and I don't see the build quality there. I've been in plenty of Teslas. It's kind of put together like an IKEA couch, in my opinion. It just looks very, very cool. It's like IKEA. IKEA looks really nice, but the quality of the build is kind of trash, right? That's how I see it.
Uzi, what do you think?
I'm lost. I just joined, so I'm
okay. Alexander.
Yeah, you do know I'm Swedish, right?
Yeah.
IKEA is holy.
Yeah. What do you think about that comment that he says? I mean, I like IKEA too, man. Magic, they've done a great job. And also, I think the build quality issues seem to persist in Fremont, but it doesn't appear to be a concern in Giga Berlin or Giga Texas or Giga Shanghai. So I don't think that's the reason here. Yoda, what do you think about this kind of, lower demand in Europe versus other geographies for Teslas, and the fact that Tesla just approved for expanding production in Giga Berlin?
Yeah, I think really the interest rate, the economy, the macros are really causing these bumps. And I think Europe hopefully will benefit from the new lower costing vehicle or the compact that's coming. The form factor should work very well there. So yeah, it's time to kind of bite the bullet through the interest rates for now.
Okay, Clay?
On build quality, so my 2021 Tesla Model Y has had no issues. The only issue I had was the lift gate had something with it, and then I brought it into Tesla and they just replaced the part for no cost and just gave it right back to me. The only thing is, I'm just curious on the suspension. Do you think that Teslas have a little bit tighter suspension? And I haven't tested the new Model 3. I heard that it was improved in that, but I just wonder about the suspension in EVs compared to gas cars, maybe because of the location of the battery pack. Or I'm just curious your guys' thoughts on maybe suspension and EVs.
Does anyone on the board have any thoughts on his question? I don't quite understand your question, honestly. Alexander?
Yeah, I have a Model 3 Performance, and it's quite a bumpy ride. But I test drove the new Model 3 Performance, and it's much better because it has this adaptive suspension where you can choose sport or comfort, and that was all gone in that one. So it's much better now. But I mean, like the Performance model, it's obviously a performance suspension or a bit stiffer suspension.
Lauren?
In terms of the European demand question, I believe it was AJ on Twitter posted a chart a few days ago that was like it listed all the sales. I think it was in Q2 of electric cars in Germany, and it was I wish I had it in front of me, but it was striking how many different models there were for sale with really low sales numbers, and it makes me think that like Tesla's competing against 40 other models in Germany, all of which are selling like 50 to 150 cars a quarter or a month or whatever the chart was. It was like a 10th.
I mean, that's the case here too. Like that's the
Right,
case in the US as well. Over the last 10 years, there's been more than 100 EV models in US.
I understand that's the case. My personal view on it though is that like it's not really a fair comparison in some ways because all those companies are willing to lose a huge amount of money on most of those sales they're getting, which is not scalable for them. And my belief is if Tesla just keeps it up, eventually, if the EV market keeps growing as a percentage of sales, it's going to be hard. Those companies are really going to have to get fit and lower their costs, or Tesla's just going to run away with a lot of that growth, because they just can't. They can't lose 20 grand a car on 1,000 cars a month. They can do it on 100 cars a month. Anyway, I think they're playing a long game, and we'll see the market share come in time.
Okay, Edward.
Yeah, on the build quality, I can see both sides of that. I had the trunk latch issue too. We just did the app, and they came out. The mobile service just came out and fixed it, popped everything back into place and everything, and I haven't had any issues since. So I get there's going to be some little issues, but if people talk about build quality, I mean, how is it the safest car ever tested by NHTSA? That's to me counterproductive. Then, I mean, if the build quality, if you're so concerned about the panel gap being off a millimeter here or there, but my car looks brand new and it's almost 5 years old. So I just don't really get it. I don't understand that.
Magic.
Yeah, so I mean, I mind when my car has a panel gap. I mind when my car squeaks when I hit the, when. Yeah, so I mean, I mind when my car has a panel gap. I mind when my car squeaks when I hit the, when I hit the center console. So I mean, I think that's sturdy and that's gonna last. My car has leather, wood, no parts that creak. So if you see a German-made car, like I mean, I don't know. I mean, you can believe whatever you want. Step into a nice BMW 5 Series, touch the door panel, touch the materials, and I mean, you tell me.
Alexander.
Well, the CEO of the company I work for, he bought an EQE, Mercedes EQE, and the battery died after a month. And then my closest boss, he got a Mercedes hybrid, and that battery died as well after 2 months. Then they took it in, replaced the battery, and then the battery broke again. So I don't know about the Mercedes and the German build quality when it comes to electric cars.
Gianni.
Yeah, I mean this tired trope about the German cars being so great. I've had Mercedes, and it was in the dealership way more than my Tesla. And the Tesla Model S does have leather and wood, if that's your thing. But the ultimate luxury is being in a safe car, having very seamless software, being able to navigate easily without pressing a bunch of buttons, having a killer stereo. I mean, the whole thing makes sense. Not going to the gas station, not getting oil. I mean, the argument that was just made by this magic guy is so antiquated.
I mean, I agree with you. I agree with you that the ultimate luxury is technology. And I think when FSD is, driving your 99% of miles, as it is in Austin and also in some parts of California, I think it's going to be irresistible for a lot of people. But on the other hand, the perception that Teslas have low build quality has stuck around way longer than I think any one of us have imagined. So, and I want to understand why that is. And I think we need to understand the problem first. But I think it is also, I think even Magic would agree with me that Giga Berlin, Giga Shanghai, and Giga Texas appear to have better build quality than Fremont, especially the Model S and X lines, the old Model S and X lines. Magic, would you agree with that statement?
I don't know. I don't know the breakdown in the quality between factories. I mean, I have buddies that work personally in Fremont that have told me the run rates and have worked at other auto manufacturers. And I mean, on pretty much every metric, it is way below what the industry averages for the run rates on how many cars have problems. How they pretty much sell cars with known problems.
Okay, but that's with Fremont, right? You said with Fremont.
The only experience I have is with Fremont. Yes.
Okay. Simon and then Edward.
Sure. So just to qualify, I can afford any car. I have had Mercedes, Audis, BMWs, Range Rovers, all of them. I also have driven and I've owned a Model Y out of China and a Model Y out of Fremont. And I can honestly say the build quality out of China is far superior. And I was actually just down at a Tesla Center today, and I was discussing it with one of the employees. I believe that the difference is it actually has to do with the way the factory is built. They're using this old factory out of Fremont, and in China, it's a revolutionary factory. I have a Model X. It squeaks a little bit. Model X Plaid. It squeaks a bit. I also have a Rivian. It's not perfect, but it is luxury. But I have the choice of buying any vehicle. I'm looking at a sports car right now, and I can't go off and buy a Porsche Taycan because I know that the technology won't work. Technology is the ultimate luxury, and I won't buy a Range Rover. I do not want technology. I don't want a BMW. The technology doesn't work. The computer system does not work as well. And for me, I just can't go back to any of those. Yes, okay, sometimes you get nice, a couple nice features in there, but honestly, you just can't. You can't. Once you go to a Tesla and you experience that user interface, it's very difficult to go back because that is the ultimate luxury.
The luxury is different from build quality. We're talking about build quality. Okay. But I thank you for your points, Edward, and then Magic.
Yes, I went from the BMW convertible i135. Great car, beautiful, great build quality. And when my wife ended up getting the electric BMW i3, it just snapped to me. We're done with gasoline. We switched over to both electric cars. Okay, but the build quality on the i3s was okay, solid. But I mean, as far as the technology inside, the build quality of the computer, the nav, the system was junk. To me, it's like decades prior to Tesla. And then once we switched over to Teslas, there's no going back to a BMW i3 that got 80 miles to a charge. I mean, it's a joke. I mean, that's the closest comparison to a vehicle. I mean, yeah, there was $15,000. Great. We saved like 7,000 or 6,000 in gas. So the car was basically buy one, get one BMW electric for free. Okay, because they were both used. $44,000 car, it's a piece of junk for 44,000. That's build quality. I don't care what anybody says.
Okay, Magic.
Yeah, I mean, we can argue about build quality all day. I mean, it's obviously here we're a bunch of people that when you buy a car, you're not going to be like, oh, the build quality sucks, right? You're going to defend your position because you don't want to look, like you made a bad decision. To shift it over, I just wanted to point out that that Tesla has lost 50%. They're below 50% market share in the U.S.
No, hold on. We have other hands on the current topic. Alexander?
Yeah, I've said this before, but as a company car, I actually have a BMW i4, and the build quality is like good, but the infotainment system is really crappy. I mean, the sound system is bad, and all the buttons, it's just confusing. And yeah, I mean, and the starter price for that i4 is the same as a Model 3 Performance. So I don't see why. Like, I even told my company, you have to strike the car because I don't want people to think that I paid for it.
Magic.
Yeah, so you're admitting that the build quality is really good, but the BMW can't click a button and make the car fart. So that means that the technology isn't there, or is that really what you're looking for? What kind of technology? Air conditioning? I mean, that's what we're talking about is build quality. The build quality is not as good as any German car on any objective metric.
Okay, so hold on 1 second. I want to understand this. What are the objective metrics for build quality?
Materials used, creaks, millimeters between door panels, all those. I mean, I'm not an expert in this field, but if you talk to somebody, they can tell you. Obviously, having door panels like you see Tesla.
So I think I want to understand this topic better. More resolution needed on this topic. materials used is more of a luxury thing, I think, rather than build quality. Okay, so scrape that one. The panel gaps is one that's come up obviously for many times over the years, and that's definitely improved since the early 2019 Model 3 times, or early 2018, let's say. That's definitely improved. Even Sandy Munro has mentioned that many times. I think there appears to be a bit of a problem with the early part of Cybertruck production ramp, but that's, that seems to be the case with every production ramp. And also, I think Teslas are getting scrutinized about panel gaps way more than other automakers. One thing I would point out is I think one objective metric should be warranty expenses. And I know this is a hot button topic for you. We've visited many times, but it is a fact that Ford, for example, every year almost, they recognize, or every other year, they recognize large expenses that the accruals didn't cover in the earlier parts of their ramps. So maybe I should do a thread on that. And maybe we can have Larry Goldberg in here one day to dig into it a little bit more. I think warranty expenses is going to be one objective metric. Panel gaps, warranty expenses. What else, Magic? What's an objective metric that you mentioned is a indicator of build quality?
Paint. So I've seen videos of new Teslas arriving with chip paint, with uneven paint jobs. Again, the door creaks when you open it and you slam it, and you can tell that the plastic is put apart. You touch it, it starts creaking. I don't know how objectively to measure. Maybe, how loud the creak is. I mean, I don't know. I don't know if there's an objective measure there.
Okay. And then maybe another objective metric could be how many times the car went for a service visit in the first few months, in the first year. Service visits in the first year.
Yeah, I mean, potentially, yeah.
Okay. Yoda?
Yeah, I think the KPIs are pretty standard, which includes like defect rates, the number of defects found per vehicle or per batch, right? And then like I think Toyota has like the first time quality, which is like the percentage of products that meet quality standards without requiring rework, which is a huge pain point. I think you mentioned like warranty claims. And then like at the end, scrap and rework rates. When you see the scraps coming out of giga factories, that's a sign of that. So those are maybe a few KPIs.
Okay, great. If anybody has any other comments on this topic, please speak now. Otherwise, we're going to change topics with Yoda. I have a question for Yoda. 3, 2, 1.
Can I add? Yes. So I think additional objective metrics could be bumpiness of the ride, noise within the cabin, and this is not quite objective, but maybe just comfort of the general seat and interior. I just wanted to add those.
Okay. And Omar's here too. I want to ask, let's switch topics. Let's talk about the new Model 3 long range rear wheel drive that is selling for exactly $29,000, $990. Model 3 below $30,000 is an incredible price. A vehicle that has such range, such efficiency is incredible. Omar, what do you think about this new Model 3 long range rear-wheel drive and Yoda?
Hey, yeah, it's really exciting to see it come back. For people who remember the early days of the Model 3 ramp, that was actually the first model they started making, the long range rear wheel drive. So there's a little bit of nostalgia there. And they stopped producing it over the years. I think now with the IRA credit, and the fact that the standard range doesn't qualify, bringing back a lower cost version of the standard range of the long range rear wheel drive, just like they did with the Model Y, makes a lot of sense. So 35,000 with the point of sale credit. If you factor in their fuel savings, it's like a $30,000 gas car. So insanely good deal. And if you just focus on if you're just focused on range, taking road trips, that kind of thing, it's got 364 miles, which is the most ever in a Model 3. You've never had a Model 3 with this much range before. And of course, for people who forgot, the EPA actually revised their methodology this year. It became a little more strict. So I've got the Model 3 Performance. Mine's got about 303 miles of range, but I've been very impressed in reality compared to on paper. On paper, my old Model 3 Performance had 310 miles of range compared to this thing having 303. In reality, this new Model 3 in the real world gets a lot more range than uh, the old one does. So I think this one with the 360 miles of range, in ideal conditions, city driving, 100 to 0, it could probably get pretty close to 400 miles. So I think this is going to be a great deal. I think a lot of people are going to be tempted. We've got FSD transfer until the end of the quarter. This is a great upgrade car if you want to move to hardware 4.
Alexander.
Yeah, you guys don't know how lucky you are. That car is like 50K in Sweden. So that's a really, really good price. It's a really good price.
Yoda, what do you think about this new offering?
It's great. I think Omar just left out one feature, which is to go for the discounted now white interior for $1,000. But the Model 3, especially now that it's kind of refreshed, it's, in my opinion, the best kind of daily driver that's out there. I think a lot of people are going for the Model Y because they think they need the extra space, but in reality, they may not. I mean, for us, we have both Model Y, Model 3, and if we're not lugging anything, hands down, Model 3 is the one that I take. It's the most fun to drive. It's easy to zip around cities. The rear wheel drive is quite stable because of the lower center of gravity. So don't let that maybe fool you if you're kind of thinking about that you want all wheel drive instead. I think this could actually be a um, be a vehicle that pushes maybe Model 3 very close to maybe becoming a better seller than the Model Y in the US. So yeah, very excited about this vehicle. Sorry, one more point. Um, I think if you are a serious investor and you currently don't own a Tesla, I think this car, at this price point, the lease, I think it's $216 a month. Um, if you add FSD on top of that, you're looking at just over $300 a month for you to then test the FSD iteratively, to then maybe inform your conviction on the stock. It's a great deal, in my opinion. How many Teslas have we sold so far?
Why are you telling people to lease it instead of buying it? I don't understand that part. Do you do that in the replies too on X? Like, isn't this a vehicle that's going to last more than 10 years? Has very little maintenance expense. Why not tell people to buy it?
Right. This is a good question. So I personally, I buy my vehicles because as a business, it's actually more favorable when you buy because there's like capital cost allocation. But for the average consumer, if you are an investor, the point I'm trying to make is instead of paying the cash up front, you lease the vehicle so that you save on the capital, then you can study the FSD progress iteratively, and over time apply portions of what you would have spent on the car into, let's say, investment in Tesla. That's my only point. Otherwise, lease or buy, it doesn't really matter.
Okay. I mean, you still have a upfront cash down payment on the lease offer. By the way, someone on YouTube Live, MC in YouTube Live, correct. The $216 per month lease is for standard range, rear wheel drive, and the down payment is $3,000. Omar.
Yeah, you can lease if you just want the lowest monthly payment possible and if you have low mileage. But leases with Tesla here in the US haven't always been the best deal. You know, when you buy a car, you say, okay, I'm going to buy this car. It costs $40,000. And so you give them $40,000, then you pay for the car. Now you're left with a car that you can maybe, let's say, sell for $35,000 or something like that if you need to. Your sort of cost that you pay, your depreciation is 5K. With the lease, they say, okay, come bring 5K just to get the car. You pay them up front, then you have to pay every month. Then after you pay them every month for 36 months, they say, okay, give me the car back. You don't have anything, right? So it's not always the best deal. And then, you say, hey, can I buy the car back? Like, for example, during the pandemic when car prices were shooting up and there was nothing available on the market that wasn't ridiculously priced. People who leased, they gave the car back and they couldn't buy out the lease. They ended up getting screwed buying another car. So I think that's probably why the lease percentage for Tesla is single digits, like 1 or 2%, which is super unusual. Like BMW and others that use captive financing more readily, they've got lease rates that are 50% north of that.
Yeah, I think for other brands, they allow you to buy back the vehicle, but for some reason, Tesla, and maybe there's others like Tesla that they don't allow after the, let's say, the 4 year. And so that's why, personally, I didn't lease my vehicles.
Yeah, I mean, because of that policy, Tesla was able to make a lot of money during the inflationary period of 2021, 2022. For other automakers, the lessees of other automakers chose to purchase and resell in the used car market. And instead, Tesla made that money in the last couple of years. And so even, and also like on top of that, obviously, if these cars are added later to the Robotaxi network to generate tens of thousands of dollars a year, in that scenario, Tesla wants to keep that profit for itself. And if a buyer wants to benefit from that potential future or the potential future of these, resale values of vehicles going up again in the coming years, then they should just buy it instead of lease it. So I actually like that policy by Tesla, but if there was ever a situation where we just, let's say we got into super depression and all car vehicle sales are plunging, that's obviously an available demand lever for Tesla. Joey.
Yeah.
Sorry, Yoda, go ahead, and then Joey.
Yeah, just one other maybe selling point is a lot of times I think we compare the cost of the Model 3 to now, we say, oh, it's approaching the Corolla or, these Camry cars. It's worth noting that when you drive one of these, and we encourage everyone to go and demo one, they really drive like, maybe like a Porsche Cayman or even a 911 if you have the performance. These are really sports car capabilities when it comes to cornering, acceleration. These are very exciting cars at Corolla price points.
Yeah, I mean, this is like the Model 3 long range real world drive at $29,990 is incredible. And to the people who say you shouldn't include gas savings, I say you are. I'm not gonna say it because I don't want to get demonetized on YouTube, but you get the point. I think people should take some time to go to the design page and look at these assumptions that Tesla uses to calculate the gas savings. They are insanely conservative assumptions, and I'll share one of them. Tesla assumes only 10,000 miles per year and only 5 years. Who drives their Tesla less than 10,000 miles a year? And do these Teslas start using gasoline after 5 years? So these assumptions are insanely conservative, and I think it is a disservice to your followers if you quote the $35,000 price instead of the $29,990 price. And I feel very strongly about this. Very strongly about this. I think people are ridiculous for not including or asking Tesla to not include gas savings. I think these people are nuts, and they're only serving legacy automaker fun. Uzi.
Well, I'm in the market for a lease for a Tesla because a sibling's going to college for 2-3 years. And I would like to see at least another filter to see about the gas, because then we'll know the EV credit and then also the gas on top of that, because the other people in my family don't. They're blind with Tesla. So it's a whole new market where they're used to going to the gas station, whatever, and they're not even considering that financially. So I think seeing the rebate for the tax credit and then on top of that gas would help, but we're only going to have the Tesla for 2-3 years.
Jimmy, then Joey.
I'm sorry, I'm the nuts person that you're referring to, and I don't like that
Joey.
type of marketing because
You
that
are
type of
nuts. That
I
is
am
not
not
marketing.
nuts.
That's not marketing. That's not
It's
marketing.
it's
It
marketing,
is
man.
allowing people. It is allowing people to see the real cost. That's not
Okay, then
marketing. That's
why
being
don't we
real.
include why do we not include tire changes and new tires? Because Teslas go over them faster than most cars.
No. You're being completely like you're deserving this nuts title. Sorry, Jimmy. I like you. You sent me a microphone. I really appreciate your support of this space, but you're nuts. Okay. And
We can disagree.
The reason why we're not including tire costs is because legacy automakers, when people are purchasing these, versus Camry versus the Model 3, there is no tire cost included on the Camry price. That's why we're not including tire price on the design page. Sorry, Jimmy, I'm not done, and we have other hands. Okay, and your sound quality sucks. Joey.
Yeah, I'm interested in the pricing positioning for this heading into kind of like the Robotaxi launch, because I would imagine the Robo Cab will have like a wait list. So this seems like the cheapest new vehicle for Robotaxi operators.
Edward Dan Omar.
Yeah, just to note, I haven't had any oil changes in 5 years, and I haven't had any brake pad fixes or rotor fixes or anything like that as well.
Yeah, I think the gas savings is a little bit controversial, but if you really think about what it's saying, an EV is fundamentally lower cost than a gas car. And this isn't just Tesla making marketing claims. Consumer Reports, that hates Tesla, said it has the #1 lowest cost of maintenance. I mean, this is a car where you don't have to do anything. The maintenance schedule is literally nothing. Change the tires, put windshield washer fluid in. There's no oil changes. There's just very few moving parts that can break. And of course, with the fuel, it takes electricity instead of gas. You save more money the more you drive it. So to sort of have a price, but only include some aspects of the price and not other aspects of the price, right? So imagine you went to the store and you saw a phone and you said, okay, well, this phone looks like it's cheaper. It's $800 instead of $1,000. but then it has this huge service plan that you have to buy. It's actually more expensive. It's kind of the same thing here. So someone might see a gas car for, let's say, $30,000, and they see the Model 3 long range rear wheel drive and say, okay, this is 35,000. It's actually 5,000 more. It looks more expensive. But when you look at the reality that the fuel costs are going to be lower and the maintenance costs are going to be lower, they're actually going to be paying less every month for the Model 3 than with the gas car, because the total cost of ownership every month, right? The expenses that you have every month, you're not going to change your tires every month. That's going to be dependent on a lot of different factors: where you're driving, how much you're driving, how often you want to change your tires. But the cost that you're going to have every month for sure are your car payment and your fuel, right? Because you're not going to buy a car and not drive it. Why would you buy the car? Fuel is an essential part of the cost, just like the monthly payment, as is maintenance. If the car doesn't work, it won't run. So when you look at all those costs, when you look at the car payment plus the fuel plus the maintenance, it's actually the same cost as a $30,000 gas car. And, while the consumer doesn't, actually, they have to actually drive and see those savings themselves, and it can vary from place to place. I think showing it is kind of a conversation starter, because people just are not thinking about these things as they make price comparisons
Exactly.
unless you bring it up.
Exactly. That first two is very important. We all know the fact that EVs on a total cost basis, and now today on a purchase price basis, cheaper than their ICE equivalents. But 99% of people out there, they don't know. They don't know. And gas savings are day one savings. All right? Most people finance their car purchase. They don't go out there and pay $35,000 on day one. They finance it. There's a monthly payment. And gas savings are also day one, continuous savings, and everybody saves. Most people who buy Teslas, they come from ICE vehicles. Sometimes people say, like, for example, I see this one person, Tyler, in YouTube live chat that says, what if they're coming from an EV? Fair, but they're also coming from a less efficient EV. Even they are saving on fuel cost. Further, I can't emphasize enough. I urge people to go to Tesla's design page and look at the assumptions. Tesla uses 10,000 miles per year assumption when calculating these gas savings. 10,000 miles per year. 99% of people drive more than that, especially people who are in the potential buyer, like the average buyer of Teslas, which are people in their 30s and 40s, working people, and in Tesla's case, 80-90% male. They drive more than 18,000 miles a year on average. Okay. Tesla uses nearly half of that for assumption. More importantly, which is often missed, more importantly, Tesla uses only 5 years, as if these cars start using gasoline after 5th year. It makes no sense whatsoever. Go to the design page, put in your own assumptions. You will see the more realistic figure is $10,000 in savings, not $5,000 in savings. Jimmy.
So nothing personal, but here's the thing. If I bring my cheap uncle who's in his 60s and I say, listen, you're going to buy a $45,000 car, and then he gets there and then he goes, wait a second, this isn't 45,000. I have to pay them 50,000. Where's this extra 5 coming from? Now, this is a man who doesn't know anything about Tesla. He's your normal consumer of a vehicle. And that's why I believe I don't disagree with you, but I believe it's bad marketing. This is what Samsung does.
It's not marketing. It is not marketing.
It is though. It is
no,
because
it's not marketing.
Just listen to why.
This is the true cause. No, I'm not going to listen to you. This is bullshit. Okay, I'm not going to listen. I'm sorry. It's bullshit.
It's fine. It's fine, but it is marketing.
Can I say something? I think it's your job to explain to your uncle that he's buying a Tesla and he's saving $5,000 in 5 years and fuel. It's not that big of a deal, buddy. So the idea that they marketing this or whatever you want to call it, I think it's a good deal. I think it's a good thing because people, it's your job to figure it out. If you're dumb enough not to understand that kind of stuff, that's your problem or your uncle. But you could tell your uncle that, look, you're going to save money in gas, and this is how it's going to happen. So I don't understand why we're arguing about this. I bought 4 Teslas in
Yeah,
4 years, okay?
exactly.
And I drove, talking about maintenance, some speaker before, I drove 45,000 miles on my first Tesla, mostly commuting from Chicago to Florida, maybe 10 trips like that, back and forth. And I had no maintenance done. I didn't even rotate the tires, nothing, zero. I've done zero to this car except put some maybe windshield fluid and maybe that. But it's a very, very low maintenance car. It's if not zero, I say.
Yeah.
And
And honestly, like it maddens me. It maddens me that Tesla is given into these absurd demands that Tesla should not use gas savings on the website. Absurd. Tesla should be using the average miles driven, and also, like somebody in the replies, Treff mentioned, Tesla should have gas savings as long as the battery warranty, not 5 years. I agree. 5 years is insane. As if these cars start using gasoline after the 50th year is insane. And it's only because Tesla's given into these absurd demands of people who are just repeating legacy automaker FUD. That's what it is. Omar?
Yeah, on the website, you can actually configure it. So it's not just kind of plugging in this assumption. You can actually plug in what your local gas price is, what your local electricity price is, and it'll actually give you an estimate specific to you and your situation. So it's a pretty powerful tool on the website there. And more than that, after you buy the car, they actually track your gas savings for you. You can go in the Tesla app and you can check out the charge stats section and you can actually find out how much money you saved compared to gas. You can punch in your own electricity costs. It looks up the local fuel costs. So, I commented on this space with mine. I'm saving about, let's see here. What was it? On my Model 3, I've saved $94 in the last month. And on my Cybertruck, I've saved $238 in the last month. So altogether, $338. That's not for $3,984 a year. Okay. So not over 5 years. For me, it's every year. Now you imagine over, let's say, a
It's
5 or
every
6.
day. It's every day you're saving
Yeah.
on gas.
So I mean, you imagine like over a 5-year car loan, it's like $20,000, right? So I mean, this is pretty significant. The reason they have to be so conservative is that if they put the real figure, what it actually is, people would tell them they were crazy because it would seem like such a large number, what you're actually going to save, over the life of the vehicle. And like Yaman says, this is something that comes out of your account. Legacy Auto wants to say, oh, this is fake, it's a scam. But imagine a guy who has $1,000 a month in his bank account. One guy has a $500 car payment and a $100 gas payment. He ends up paying $600. Another guy has a $550 car payment, but a $20 fuel payment, and he's actually paying less than the guy who has a lower car payment. He's actually going to have less money in his account at the end of the month, which is really what matters.
Model 3 long range. Model 3 long range has 363 mile range. Okay. 363 mile range. And the only reason Tesla can't boast about this $29,000, the two handle, is because of people making these crazy, crazy arguments, repeating legacy auto FUD. That's the only reason when Elon tweets, he has to say $35,000 because he's going to piss off so many people if he actually says the real figure, which is $29,990. Yoda?
Yeah, maybe we could just do a very simple math here. So let's assume that on a monthly basis, your current gas fuel cost is $200 a month. And let's assume that you're about to buy a Tesla, and the Tesla is actually $10,000 more expensive than, let's say, the gas vehicle that you are also considering. So 10K more. Well, if you borrow 10K, even at 7%, that that annual interest expense is $700. Divide that by 12, your monthly expense on interest is $58. Now, when you drive the Tesla, you're gonna save on gas, but you have electricity costs. And let's say that's $50 a month. $50 of electricity cost plus the $58 of interest expense is $108 of total monthly cost on those two items. Now, that displaces your original cost of $200 on fuel. So you're actually saving money uh, on a monthly basis, and of course on an annualized basis. This is pretty simple math in terms of a lower operating cost.
Uzi.
My perspective is that you should have the gas as part of the calculation. Just have it as a separate filter so you can make those calculations. And then on top of that, it should be clear.
It is there. The calculator is there, but it's hidden. You have to click through like 5 things to get to the calculator. And then if you actually do get to the calculator, you realize how absurdly conservative those estimates are. Number one, 10,000 miles per year. Number two, 5 years savings, as if after 50 years, Tesla start using gasoline. Absurd. Absurd. Okay. Tesla should be yelling from the rooftop or the top of the hills or whatever the saying is that you can get a Model 3 long range, rear wheel drive, 363-mile range with a 2 handle.
I have another pet peeve with the website.
Humanities.
Yeah, there's other things as well. I agree with you, Yaman, that they're not making a big enough deal out of this. Maybe what they need to do is on the website, one, allow you to put in the actual miles that you personally drive each year with a drop down or an entry box or something to calculate this and show the total cost of ownership over 5 years with all these things included. And one other thing that really bothers me about ICE vehicles is changing the oil. Where does that oil go? If you care about the environment, it's kind of a big deal that you don't have to change your oil.
Yeah,
at least
that's
to me
the
it
other
is.
thing. Like they're not showing maintenance savings. They're not
Yeah.
showing the reasonable gas savings. If you do all that math, this thing is $15,000. It's less than a Corolla, and you guys
I
have me
agree.
yelling in a coffee shop right now.
Yeah, I tweeted out yesterday that anybody that doesn't understand the cost savings from an electric vehicle is making a huge mistake. And ironically, I just tweeted that yesterday, I think. But yeah, I agree.
Omar and then Ellie.
Yeah, hopefully some people in that coffee shop are overhearing you and saying, "Huh, I need to get a Tesla. This sounds pretty great." But I just wanted to make a point that one other thing about this for people who haven't switched is you find that when your cost of travel goes down substantially, when like, because you don't realize you're thinking about it, but you kind of are thinking about that $100 gas bill. Oh, okay, if I go drive there right now, I'm gonna have to get a new tank of gas, and that's gonna be $100 or whatever. When you have lower cost travel, you actually go more places. You feel more free to go do whatever you want. The car is fun to drive. And so when people switch to Tesla, you typically see them actually drive more than they did in their previous car. So the savings are usually even bigger compared to if you'd driven a gas car because you just end up using it a lot more. In many cases, people will even end up, driving instead of flying and saving money there by just using autopilot for short distances instead of, like flying LA to San Francisco or something. So really actually has an effect on demand if you want to say it that way. When the price is lower, you actually end up driving a lot more because it's cheap.
So, yeah, thanks, Yaman. So on top of everything you guys said, at least here where I'm from, so buying a Tesla, obviously it's a better car. You know, all the potential is amazing, FSD and whatnot. But also, two things. Against all the Chinese, so Tesla has zero maintenance, like you guys said, but all the Chinese has maintenance. So basically, there is a routine every 2 years. Every 2 years, Omar, you need to stop and go for the shop, you know, and replace this, change that, probably fluid and stuff, but every 2 years if you want to keep the warranty. And on top of that, you know, my mom just bought a Zeekr, unfortunately, so she has to go to all the other EV stations, not a Tesla one, obviously, and it's half the price. So when it comes to Tesla, if you own Tesla, it's half the price comparing all the other Chinese cars because they have to go to all the other companies and they pay double the price. So just, you know, buy Tesla.
Arthur.
Do you think they'll offer the acceleration boost option on this new long range Model 3?
I don't know.
I'm
But
kinda
before we get to that,
spoiled.
before we change topics, let me get to these two hands. Alexander?
Yeah, like for some reason, I still hang out at Facebook at sometimes, maybe because I hate myself. But if you look at in the EV hate groups there, if you mention the gas savings, they're just gonna say like, "Oh no, but yeah, maybe you save money on the gasoline, but you have to switch out the battery in like 2 years."
Dude, I'm telling you, this whole argument that Tesla should not show gas savings is legacy FUD. FUD from EV haters, oil special interest, legacy automakers. When you actually step back and think about it, it makes zero sense. And it's insane that Tesla fans are pressuring Tesla not to show it. Insane. Tesla should be showing the real figures, which is 15,000 miles on average. For Tesla's potential buyers is actually higher, 18,000 miles on average. And the fact that Tesla's stopping at 5 years is crazy. There's no justification for that whatsoever because these cars still drive on electricity after 5 years. Edward.
Yeah, one more thing about that true cost of ownership. I don't know if Tesla factors in on their website whether it's supercharging, that whether your electric costs on supercharging or whether you're charging at home or a little bit of both. But I think that's something that they can add to the website to make everybody's to be able to have a calculator there to figure out. Because I mean, I charge out of the home all the time and not the supercharger, so I'm probably saving more than most. But I don't know if they factored in. Does anybody know?
I don't know. Okay, we're gonna change topics. I'm done with this topic. I'm like, my blood pressure is up there. I'm about to have a heart attack, and everybody wants to hear more from Omar about why he said this is going to be a big FSD weekend. Omar.
Hey, yeah, so FSD 1243 is ready to go wide now. I drove it yesterday. It's no longer exhibiting a lot of the cautiousness that you typically see with new versions. More confident, less hesitation, less slowness. It's been progressing well. It's continued to roll out. So yesterday I got in my car and I said, okay, let me just drive and pick random points on the map. I made this little app. It's on my GitHub. If you want to build it, you can run it on your iPhone or your Mac or whatever. And it just generates random points within an area. So I said, okay, just generate random destinations. And I had to generate random destinations and drive there and see how long I could make it go using random routes that have never been driven before without a safety critical intervention. And after about 95 minutes, I just gave up and went home. I got tired of looking for an intervention because there were no safety critical takeovers of any kind. There was at one point an accelerator press. It was kind of waiting too long and like a really long time. and not making a left turn. So I gave it an accelerator press for that. Other than that, you can check it out. It just handled everything itself. So, I mean, I don't even know who's going to watch this if I'm like, publishing videos that are like a feature length film and it's just FSD driving around and not really doing anything wrong. But I kind of just put it out there just for the record. And I can understand what Elon's saying when he's saying the limiting factor is actually now validation, right? Because if I can drive around for 90 minutes and not have a safety critical intervention, imagine what the test drivers have to do. They give them a new version and they say, okay, here's let's say 12.5 or 12.6 or the new version, and go test it. So just to figure out if it's better than 12.4, before you'd go drive and you'd have 2 or 3 safety critical interventions, right? And then, maybe the new version comes out and it's only, 1 or 2. And you can say, okay, this thing got better. You can see very quickly how many interventions there are because they happen so frequently. Now, as we're getting into the realm where you have to really drive for hours to get an intervention, the test drivers have a lot more work to do just to find out if the new build that they've trained is better than the old build. And okay, is it only better in certain places? Is it better everywhere? Are there certain bugs in certain places? So I think they're kind of just struggling with this new process a little bit. They're trying to learn how to do it. Some better techniques and processes might help them sort of eval these new models better. But really what they need is just more users. Obviously, the QA fleet can only do so much. Having it out in shadow mode and having it out in real cars, doing A/B testing between one version and the other, that's probably the only real way to get that validation that they need, that it is in fact performing as well as they think it is. So, it's about time. I don't know if about Tesla's here. I think we were about 10% of the eligible vehicles last I checked. I'm expecting that this weekend, we're going to have more people get FSD 12.4.3 than have FSD 12.4.3. So I would bet that the install base doubles or more this weekend.
Thank you, Omar, for that update. Joey?
Yeah, the left turn regression is actually pretty interesting. I had a left turn that used to work before V12 and now it doesn't work. Curious, Omar, how much do you find that as you're using it a lot more than I am?
I mean, I did have one incident where in the early days of this version, when I was getting on the highway and it was supposed to turn left and it kind of just went straight. So, sometimes a new feature of the model can manifest itself as a bug. A new behavior that's supposed to be good actually causes it to mess up on something that it did before correctly. And they have to kind of, apply a patch and fix it. And that doesn't always require a full update. But I mean, maybe you could give us some more detail. So, what exactly was going on with this left turn? Why was it not able to make it?
Yeah, so I am at a red light. It's my regular commute. And I'm usually first on the left turn of the light. And when it turns red to green, it doesn't recognize this light anymore. And it's switched during the V12 iterations. So I always have to hit the accelerator. Yeah.
Huh. That's strange. I guess it's probably reading the wrong traffic light and focusing on the wrong traffic light. So, yeah, I would just take over and leave a voice note, and hopefully you should see that get fixed pretty soon.
All right, we have a few people requesting speak. Okay. We're already over time, but let's go through those real quick. I'm going to bring everyone up. Digital, did you have anything to say?
Thanks for bringing me up. I was just going to say earlier that
I can't hear Digital. Can you guys hear Digital?
Yeah, I can hear him.
All right, I'll be back.
I was just going to say that in regards to the conversation you were having earlier, I looked in my app, and for the past month, I had $409 of gas equivalent and $300 spent. So I look at it as like a golden coupon, 25% off every time you got to fill up the tank. And I think that that's, a pretty average amount of savings. So it's a way you can kind of compare.
like these anecdotal notes are great, but it really muddies the waters.
Well,
the point is, listen.
If you're trying to talk to somebody that doesn't,
the point is very simple. These are real savings. A penny saved is a penny earned. Okay. And then the number 2 point is Tesla's assumptions are absurdly conservative, and Tesla should be ashamed of itself for not standing up for the true level of savings and giving into these absurd demands of legacy oil FUD. They should be displaying the real savings. Instead of using 10,000 miles per year, they should be using 15,000 miles per year. Instead of showing 5 years, they should be showing the length of the battery warranty. And the fact that some people are pressuring Tesla to not show these true savings is absurd. Omar?
I think it'll be interesting as the industry moves to a price per mile for rideshare, and that becomes a more typical way to consume transport. The price per mile is an all-inclusive cost. So whereas with EVs, you can't really see it, when you get to a per mile price, you'll see the fuel savings of EV right away in those prices, and no one will be able to argue with that. So I think that will probably be a positive development. But right now, they've struggled to get EVs not only lower on total cost of ownership, but to actually cost the fuel and maintenance saving, because this idea is so pervasive that the fuel savings aren't real. So they've done all this work to bring down the cost of EVs to the level of an ICE car. When they get to per mile pricing, consumers will just be able to see the price right there and say, wow, the cost per mile for an EV is way lower than an ICE car.
Alexander.
So Omar, if I were to take my IKEA box and paddle over to the US, would I be able to rent a Tesla with FSD on it to try it out?
Yeah, absolutely. There's tons on Turo. I can come give you a ride if you're in California. So it's not hard to get a Tesla with FSD. Any Tesla can run it. The reason I say rent from rent from Turo rather than Hertz is that, of course, with Hertz, you can't get FSD on those cars because they have control over the account. But Turo, on the other hand, you can find a host who does have a car with FSD and rent it from them and be able to test it on anything you want.
Yeah, if you were looking for any proof that this idea that Tesla should not include gas savings is originated from FUD, go to YouTube live chat right now. Literally, the only person arguing against this is the person who usually spreads FUD in YouTube live chat. Trevor. Trevor, you have to unmute yourself. Okay. I guess Trevor's. Can you guys hear Trevor?
I don't see him.
Okay, James.
Hey, I just noticed a mention of FSD 12.5 that the vehicles are going to be able to communicate road closures or their obstacles back to the rest of the fleet in real time. What do you think about that, Omar? That sounds like a huge change to how it works.
Well, it's an additional piece of information. This is coming from a tweet Elon wrote where he mentioned that if a bunch of Teslas are driving down a narrow road and the road is closed, then they should be able to communicate back to other Teslas that there's a road closed. Essentially, dynamic real-time maps. every car in the fleet not only having data in its visualization, but actually sending it back up to the server so that it can be sent down to any other car that has an internet connection. And this is going to allow your car to do things that you're like, wow, how is it that smart? You'll see it change lanes ahead of time to avoid a pothole. And a lot of this stuff is already shipping. For example, in the Model S and X and Cybertruck, they have rough patches of road, and they'll automatically adjust the suspension ahead of a known rough patch of road that they detected with the accelerometer of the other cars. And so you don't even notice anything, but it's just smoother over that rough patch of road. So they've been doing things like this for some time. I think they're expanding it and using it in FSD more. It is a pretty powerful idea. The cars being able to communicate with each other, and then the car really knows things that even you don't know. You might not know about that construction or that pothole or that rough surface of the road, but the car knows and it can actually act way ahead of time. And of course, you won't have to require a full update. Let's say there's a problem, one car could just report it up. Let's say it reports, oh, okay, I had an intervention here, and it can let the other cars know, and the other cars can sort of be aware of it, and they can respond appropriately, maybe take a different route. Maybe, oh, okay, here I required to take over because the road was blocked. Now a different Tesla goes another way. They don't have a takeover. So yeah, the ability to talk to each other, I call this kind of Tesla maps, real-time maps of the world. It is, I think, going to make the software much better at driving and make much smarter choices than even a human can make in some cases.
I think it's also cool because then the cars can only be aware of things locally by the cars that are nearby rather than having to send it home and then every car has to remember everything. They can just limit it to where their car is driving. So that's pretty cool. Thanks.
Yeah, I mean, it's really cool when you think about really what this technology could be. Once you have computers, I mean, computers are able to track so many different things. It's the most amazing feeling when you're on a highway and you're on FSD, you're just relaxing, and suddenly you see FSD changing lanes and you see it get off the highway. And you go, huh, why is it doing that? And right as it gets off, you see a massive traffic jam. And it just gets out, does some weird route on surface streets, then gets back on the highway, and you get back on, and the traffic's all clear. And you're like, wow, I didn't even think about it. I didn't even know about it. But the car responded ahead of time. And those are the kinds of experiences we're going to have. That's why in the future, people are going to turn FSD on. They're not going to even, they're going to say, okay, well, if I drive manually, I'm not going to know about things like that. FSD will. Let me just turn FSD on.
All right, this is Friday. We're going to go for 10 more minutes and that's it. Okay, please, quick points. Ellie,
Yeah, thanks you.
one sentence.
Yeah, very quick question. Omar, can you control FSD not to go to toll roads and stuff like that?
Yeah, I can
Yeah, we
handle
can't
toll
talk
roads.
about. Okay.
That's it.
Uzi,
Could Starlink play a role in this Tesla Maps equation or no?
guys, these are just we can't talk about these things some other day. These are new topics. Like seriously. Toaster. I can't hear toaster. Can you guys? Okay, Thomas.
Yeah. Yes. Do we know if there are any plans to revamp or increase the accuracy of the energy planner? I noticed that in my Cybertruck, when I'm towing, or even actually when I'm not towing, on a downhill, it's overly optimistic, and it states that I should be regenning much more than I am. Do we know if there's any plans to fix that?
Tesla is always improving on every front. And obviously, there's going to be future software updates. I don't know anything else specifically other than that. Omar, do you?
No, I think you got it right.
Okay, thank you. Trevor, you may unmute yourself.
Hey, has anyone else seen a major regression with 12.4.3?
Omar?
No, it seems much better overall. What kind of regression are you seeing?
I've had a lot of. I drove it for the first time today. Just disengagements with 10 and took over because there were other cars coming, and one where the car almost hit an open door with a person inside of it. I went as long as I comfortably could, and then I stopped it.
Well, obviously, just make sure to take over and don't let your car do anything bad. I'm sure that in future drives, it'll probably improve.
Okay. No,
Oh, Mark, can you briefly explain how a build gets better like you just experienced with 12.4 without a point update? Thank you.
Yeah, there's a lot of different factors at play that can affect the software. Sometimes there's different configuration changes they can make. Sometimes the sort of cautiousness level starts out high and they can kind of dial it back as they get validation data showing that it's not having any issues. So a lot of people with a new version, they say, "Oh, it's worse, it's driving much slower." But every new version's slower. They don't have to send out a full update. They can kind of turn that dial down and make it more assertive over time as they get the validation back. Then often you have different parts of the network or different tasks that are safety critical that have to pass validation first. So let's say there's a part of the neural net or a part of the code that reads red lights. If you just deploy it, you could have an issue where it starts to run red lights or something. So what they do is they run the old and the new model side by side. They put the old model in control, but then when validation shows that the new model's better and not a step back in any way, they flip the switch, and that can happen without a full update. So there are some things that can change without a full update. It's not necessarily downloading an entirely new model, but some of the parameters around that can be tweaked. And there's also things like map hints, as we talked about, the cars telling each other about things. There is some level of that happening today. So they can discover something, put it in a map hint, and then that changes the driving behavior as well.
Jerry, on yourself. Okay. All right. We went on for 2 hours and 20 minutes. Thank you very much, everybody. And I will talk to you all next time. Take care.
Thanks.